Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Some treasures are priceless not because you can own them, but because you never will. Throughout history, the most brilliant men, artists, warriors, thinkers, were undone not by their enemies, but by the one woman they could never claim. Napoleon had Josephine, Dante had Beatrice, Gatsby had Daisy. Even the strongest find their weakness carved into human form. And for Sigma males, the men who stand outside the hierarchy, who bow to no authority, the universe plays a cruel but necessary trick. It sends them the one woman they can't have. Why? Because absolute independence without resistance is a fantasy that turns to arrogance. The Sigma, who prides himself on being untouchable, needs a reminder that even he can bleed. That reminder often arrives wearing a smile that disarms him, a mind that unsettles him, or a spirit so wild it refuses to be captured. She is not his possession, she's his lesson. It's ironic, almost comical, that the man who avoids attachments becomes haunted by the one attachment he can never secure, like watching a lion pacing outside a cage, only this time the lion is locked out, not in. And that frustration, that hunger, it reshapes him in ways victories never could. This is not about heartbreak in the ordinary sense. It's about a higher design, a cosmic balancing act where the Sigma is humbled not through defeat, but through denial. The woman he can't have isn't sent to punish him, she's sent to sharpen him. And in that paradox lies the story of why the universe withholds what he desires most. Number 1. To teach him that love isn't always about having, but about becoming. To teach him that love isn't always about having, but about becoming. This is the deepest reason the universe sends a Sigma male the one woman he can't have. For a man who prides himself on self-sufficiency, it's easy to fall into the illusion that love is just another victory, another achievement to add to his list of conquered challenges. But the unattainable woman dismantles that belief. She forces him to learn that love isn't a trophy or a possession. It's an experience that transforms him, even if it remains incomplete. Her role in his life isn't to settle beside him, but to awaken a part of him that would have stayed asleep without her. She makes him aware of the limits of his own control, and in doing so, she expands his capacity for depth. He begins to realize that wanting her, even without having her, reshapes him more than getting her ever could. This kind of longing is uncomfortable. It humbles him, it unsettles him, and at times it even feels unfair. But it also strips away his ego. It makes him confront a truth most men run from. Love is not about ownership. It's about transformation. It's about the way a connection changes who you are at your core, even if it never becomes yours to hold. The unattainable woman leaves her mark on him precisely because she remains just out of reach. She becomes the measure of something bigger than desire, a reminder that his growth doesn't come from collecting victories, but from enduring the ache of an unfinished story. And in that ache, he discovers strength that solitude never taught him. She teaches him patience, humility, and the courage to live with longing instead of answers. It's ironic that the Sigma, who runs from dependency, finds his greatest evolution through a bond he cannot claim. Yet, that's the brilliance of it. The woman he can't have is not a punishment, but a catalyst. She shows him that the truest form of love is not about possession. It's about becoming more than he was before he met her. And in that becoming, he carries her with him forever, even if she was never his. Number 2. Because longing is the only fire that outlives satisfaction. Longing has a strange power. It burns hotter and lasts longer than satisfaction ever could. For the Sigma male, who prides himself on conquering challenges and moving on without attachments, the one woman he can't have becomes the flame he never outruns. Everything else in his life, goals, victories, conquests, eventually loses its shine once he's achieved them. The satisfaction fades, and he quickly moves to the next target. But longing doesn't fade. It lingers like a fire that never goes out, and it keeps him restless, alive, and painfully aware of what desire really means. This woman becomes the exception that rewrites his rules. She shows him that there's a difference between winning something and being transformed by it. Winning gives him control, but longing gives him vulnerability. And that vulnerability is sharper, more consuming, and far more unforgettable than any victory he's ever had. It unsettles him in ways his self-reliance never prepared him for. It gnaws at him during quiet moments, reminding him that not everything in life bends to his will. That reminder is brutal, but it's also necessary. The universe knows the Sigma would get bored if every battle was his to win. It knows his fire needs fuel that doesn't burn out in a single night of victory. And so it gives him her, not as a prize, but as a permanent tension. She becomes the hunger he can't satisfy, the song that never ends, the silent ache that fuels his evolution. Every other conquest turns into a closed chapter. She remains the book he can't stop rereading, even though he'll never reach the final page. What makes this fire extraordinary is that it doesn't destroy him. It shapes him. Longing stretches his soul in ways satisfaction never could. It forces him to carry passion without release, to live with beauty without possession, and to understand that some fires are meant to burn forever. And in that endless burn, he learns the truth. The things we cannot have often leave a deeper imprint than the things we do. For the Sigma, this eternal hunger becomes the spark that keeps him alive, long after satisfaction has turned to ash. Number 3. To keep his heart sharp instead of rusting in detachment. Detachment is the Sigma male's greatest weapon, but it's also his greatest risk. When he pulls too far away from the world, when he surrounds himself with silence and refuses to be touched by anyone, his heart begins to harden. The danger isn't that he feels too much, it's that he stops feeling at all. Without resistance, without something that pierces his emotional armor, he can become a man who moves through life untouched, but also unmoved. That kind of numbness is death disguised as strength. This is why the universe sends him the one woman he can't have. She's not a comfort or a victory. She's the ache that keeps him human. Her presence reminds him that he isn't invincible, that beneath all his control and self-sufficiency, there is still a pulse that can quicken, a desire that can sting. The sharpness of that ache is what keeps his heart alive, preventing it from rusting in cold detachment. Without her, his independence could calcify into indifference. With her, he's forced to admit that his heart still beats for something beyond survival and solitude. Her unattainability is not a punishment, but a kind of medicine. A bitter one, yes, but necessary. Because when longing cuts into him, it slices away the numbness he's tempted to embrace. It forces him to wrestle with beauty he can't own, passion he can't tame, and love he can't claim. That wrestling keeps his spirit raw, alive, and unwilling to settle into apathy. The Sigma doesn't realize it at first, but she is his antidote to emotional decay. She is the reason he doesn't completely withdraw into the shadows and vanish from the living world. Her very absence makes him present. Her refusal to be his keeps him tethered to the vulnerability he secretly needs to grow. And so the ache becomes his teacher. It sharpens his heart like a blade, carving out depth he wouldn't have found in endless solitude. In the end, she's not the weakness that breaks him. She's the sharp reminder that prevents him from breaking himself. And though he may never have her, she gives him something far more valuable. A heart that stays alive instead of rusting into silence. Number 4. Because she is the checkmate he was never supposed to win. The Sigma male lives as if every move is part of a grand design. He doesn't waste words, he doesn't stumble into battles, and he rarely plays a game he hasn't already won in his head. Strategy is his oxygen. It keeps him sharp, ahead, untouchable. But the universe, unwilling to let brilliance decay into arrogance, places one riddle before him that will never be solved: the woman he cannot have. She is the checkmate that ends the illusion of total mastery. He can outmaneuver rivals, bend systems, and control his environment, but she stands beyond the reach of all his tactics, not because he lacks intelligence or effort, but because her role is different. She exists as the piece of the board that resists all calculation, the move he cannot predict, the outcome he cannot rewrite. Her refusal to be conquered humbles him in a way no defeat ever has. Without her, his genius risks collapsing into vanity. If every battle could be won, if every puzzle could be solved, he would grow blind to his own limits, drunk on the myth of his invincibility. But her unattainability keeps him awake, sharp, restless. She proves that not all games are meant to end with victory, that some exist to preserve the balance between brilliance and humility. This is not failure, it's preservation. She saves him from himself, from the danger of believing he has mastered every corner of life. She forces him to accept that some things are beyond reason, beyond effort, beyond control. And in that acceptance, his brilliance doesn't dim, it deepens. He learns that true intelligence isn't about solving everything. It's about recognizing the mysteries that should remain unsolved. The Sigma doesn't lose in this checkmate. Instead, he gains the wisdom of restraint, the humility of limits, and the fire of a challenge that will never end. She becomes the eternal puzzle, the piece of his story that denies closure, and in doing so keeps his mind alive. Without her, his strategy would curdle into arrogance. With her, it becomes what it was always meant to be, brilliance sharpened by humility. Number 5. To prevent him from becoming a tyrant of solitude. Solitude is the Sigma male's natural territory. He thrives in silence, away from the noise of the crowd, away from the constant scramble for approval and recognition. But solitude, when left unchecked, can twist into something darker. Without resistance, without reminders, he risks slipping into a state where his independence is no longer freedom but self-worship. He begins to confuse isolation with superiority, convincing himself that he doesn't need anyone, that his detachment makes him untouchable. That's when solitude stops being strength and starts becoming exile, a prison disguised as a kingdom. The universe sends him the one woman he can't have to interrupt this dangerous drift. She unsettles him in a way solitude never could. Her presence reminds him that his independence is not infinite power, but a choice balanced by humility. He can't bend her to his will, and that denial keeps his ego in check. She pulls him back from the brink of turning solitude into tyranny, where he rules over no one but imagines himself a god in his own little empire of silence. Her unattainability punctures his pride. It forces him to acknowledge that no matter how strong, disciplined, or detached he becomes, there are still forces greater than his control. She is proof that freedom without friction is an illusion, and that independence without vulnerability is nothing more than arrogance wrapped in solitude. In this way, she acts as a safeguard against his own extremes. She keeps his solitude sharp, not stagnant, alive with tension, not dulled by ego. Her refusal to be conquered transforms his independence from a throne into a discipline, something he must continually navigate rather than worship blindly. She doesn't destroy his strength, she refines it. By denying him, she ensures he never mistakes isolation for invincibility. She teaches him that freedom without humility is just another cage, one built by pride and locked from the inside. And in that lesson, he avoids becoming the tyrant of solitude, powerful but trapped, worshipping a kingdom that's nothing more than walls around himself. Number 6. Because obsession is his hidden weakness. The Sigma male prides himself on being untouchable. He wears detachment like armor, convinced that no one and nothing can pierce through it. To the outside world, he looks immune to obsession, unmoved by beauty, unimpressed by status, and uninterested in chasing what others crave. But the universe knows his secret. His stoicism isn't flawless. It only takes one woman, the one he can't have, to expose the cracks. She becomes the exception that shatters his illusion of perfect control. While others fade easily into the background of his life, she lingers. She interrupts his silence, uninvited, occupying his thoughts in ways he can't switch off. He doesn't chase women, yet he catches himself replaying her words, noticing her presence in a room or measuring other connections against her. That fixation unsettles him because it feels like betrayal, not of her, but of himself. For a man who swears by detachment, obsession feels like weakness, and weakness is the one thing he refuses to admit. But the universe sends her not to break him, but to humble him. She teaches him that beneath all his independence lies a very human flaw, desire that doesn't yield to logic. Obsession is the reminder that no man is beyond longing, not even the Sigma. And while this vulnerability might sting, it also prevents him from calcifying into someone so detached that nothing ever moves him again. She forces him to face the reality that his stoicism isn't invincibility, it's discipline. And like any discipline, it has limits. She is the limit, the one he can't ignore, the one who proves that even the most controlled men are still human. This revelation both humiliates and refines him. It strips away arrogance while deepening his understanding of himself. Obsession for the Sigma isn't destruction. It's revelation. She exposes the very thing he hides, that his heart still beats with hunger, that his silence can still be disrupted, and that his detachment is not the absence of feeling, but the battle to contain it. And in that revelation he discovers the truth. His hidden weakness is not the end of his strength. It's the proof that his strength is real. Number 7. To stop him from mistaking independence for invincibility. Independence is the Sigma male's crown jewel. He prides himself on building a life where he doesn't lean on anyone, where his survival, success, and peace depend solely on himself. To him, independence feels like proof of invincibility, that if he can stand alone, nothing can touch him. But the universe has a way of humbling even the most untouchable men, and it does so through her, the one woman he can't have. She is the living contradiction to his illusion. No matter how disciplined, intelligent, or self-contained he becomes, she proves he's still human, and humans are breakable. She's the reminder that strength isn't the absence of need, but the ability to live with it. Her presence reveals the truth he tries to deny. He can survive alone, yes, but he cannot escape longing, vulnerability, or the raw ache of desire. That doesn't make him weak, it makes him real. Her denial, her distance, or even her refusal to be possessed by him cuts through his self-image. It shows him that self-sufficiency is not immunity. He can master solitude, conquer challenges, and silence the world, but he cannot silence the part of himself that still yearns. And that yearning humbles him. It prevents him from slipping into the arrogance of believing he's above humanity itself. This lesson isn't designed to destroy him, but to keep him balanced. Independence is power, but unchecked, it mutates into delusion. The woman he can't have stops that mutation. She becomes the immovable force his strength can't bulldoze, the silent truth he can't ignore. Through her, he learns that true power isn't about being invincible. It's about knowing where you can break, and still standing strong anyway. Her presence carves honesty into his independence. She doesn't weaken him, she keeps him from lying to himself. And though he'll never have her, she gives him something far greater, the wisdom to carry his freedom without mistaking it for godhood. Because if independence made him untouchable, he would lose the very thing that makes him human. She ensures he never forgets it. Number 8. Because without loss, his victories mean nothing. Victory without loss is like light without shadow. It loses its meaning. For the Sigma male, who often bends the world to his will through independence, focus, and discipline, winning can become dangerously empty. When every pursuit ends in triumph, the thrill fades and achievement turns into routine. The universe knows this, and that's why it sends him the one woman he cannot have. She becomes the crack in his armor, the reminder that no man, no matter how untouchable, escapes the laws of balance. She is not sent to break him, but to give weight to his victories. Without her, his successes risk becoming hollow trophies stacked in an empty room. With her, he learns the bitter truth. The value of winning is measured by the sting of what cannot be won. Her absence carves a space inside him that no achievement can fill, and paradoxically, that emptiness gives meaning to everything else he gains. It's the contrast that saves him. Because he cannot have her, he cherishes what he does have. Every accomplishment, every connection, every step forward becomes richer, heavier, because it's set against the backdrop of what lies forever beyond his reach. She prevents him from drowning in the arrogance of unchecked success, from believing he is untouchable. By denying him, she anchors him. She ensures that his life is not just a parade of hollow victories, but a landscape marked with depth, weight, and tension. This isn't punishment, it's preservation. The Sigma's danger is that he could become so self-sufficient that he stops valuing anything at all. She is the counterweight that keeps him human. Her unattainability injects humility into his power, turning his triumphs from shallow victories into meaningful milestones. In the end, she is the invisible loss behind every win, the missing piece that makes his world complete through absence rather than presence. Without her, his victories would collapse into emptiness. With her, just out of reach, he discovers that loss is not the opposite of winning, but the force that gives it meaning. Number 9. To remind him that not all power is transferable. Power, for the Sigma male, is not about ruling others. It's about mastering himself. He bends careers to his vision, shapes ideas into realities, and even dominates silence, making it his ally instead of his enemy. To him, power feels transferable. If he can control one domain, surely he can extend that mastery everywhere. But the universe intervenes with a cruel precision. It sends him the one woman he cannot have, and through her, he learns the hardest lesson: not all power carries over. She is the living boundary he cannot cross. His focus, discipline, and strength might win him every battle in life, but they mean nothing against her refusal. She doesn't bend, she doesn't break. She remains outside his grasp, untouched by all the methods that brought him success elsewhere, and that reality shakes him to his core. Because if power can't be transferred here, then perhaps it was never absolute to begin with. This lesson is not meant to humiliate him, but to refine him. It stops him from falling into the illusion that control in one arena guarantees control in all. It humbles him with the reminder that human connection, attraction, and love cannot be engineered like strategies or systems. They are wild, unpredictable, and sovereign. She becomes proof that some forces remain free, no matter how strong he is. Her unattainability keeps his power honest. It draws a line in his world, forcing him to accept limits. Without that limit, his mastery could rot into arrogance, into the belief that nothing lies beyond his influence. But with her, he's reminded that even kings of solitude bow to mysteries they cannot command. And so she becomes more than the one who resists him. She becomes the lesson that saves him, the awareness that power is not universal, that some realms remain untouchable, and that true wisdom comes from recognizing where control ends. For the Sigma, this truth is sharp but necessary. It ensures that he carries his strength with humility instead of mistaking it for godhood. Number 10. Because unattainable love forces purity of intention. For the Sigma male, most of life is about control. He picks his battles carefully, keeps his circle tight, and ensures nothing has power over him that he hasn't allowed. But when the universe sends him the one woman he can't have, all those rules collapse. He can't strategize his way into her heart, can't outmaneuver her into submission, can't force the story to go his way. And in that powerless state, he is forced to confront something he never planned for: purity of intention. Because he cannot own her, he is left with only one option: to appreciate her as she is, without bending her into his design. He learns to admire beauty without needing to possess it, to care without suffocating, to want without destroying. That's a rare lesson for a man who has always survived by conquering. She strips him of his instinct to consume and makes him face the uncomfortable truth that some forms of love are about preservation, not possession. Her unattainability keeps his desire honest. Without the possibility of ownership, there's no room for ego to creep in, no illusion of dominance to corrupt the connection. His feelings remain untainted by control because control isn't on the table. What he feels for her becomes the purest thing in his life precisely because it can never be twisted into something self-serving. She forces him to value the experience of love itself, not the benefits it could give him. In this way, she sharpens him into a better man. While others cheapen love by turning it into a transaction, he is forced to sit with the raw ache of wanting something he cannot have. That ache is painful, yes, but it refines him. It teaches him that love at its highest form isn't about claiming, it's about revering. The one woman he can't have leaves him with nothing but purity. And that purity, though bittersweet, becomes his quiet redemption. She ensures his love never decays into control, his desire never mutates into greed, and his admiration never hardens into ownership. She doesn't just remain out of reach. She keeps his heart clean in a world that constantly tempts him to corrupt it. Number 11. Because perfection must remain distant to keep him searching. Perfection is the one illusion the Sigma male secretly battles. He tells himself he doesn't need it, that he thrives outside society's games and doesn't chase the fantasies others do. But deep down, even he is tempted by the idea that one person, one connection, one moment could complete him. The universe knows this temptation is dangerous. Completion is a lie. It breeds stagnation. And so it places before him the one woman he can't have, not as a curse, but as a mirror. She reflects back the truth. Perfection was never meant to be possessed. Her distance forces him to see that no matter how much he desires her, there will never be a moment where everything is finished, whole, and neatly tied together. She embodies the eternal gap, the reminder that the search is more important than the destination. And because he cannot have her, he keeps moving, keeps questioning, keeps evolving. If he could claim her, he might mistake the feeling of temporary completion for the end of his journey. He might settle, believing he had reached the pinnacle, and in that settling, his fire would dim. But by keeping her unattainable, the universe saves him from that trap. She becomes the unreachable horizon that fuels his restlessness, ensuring he never stops sharpening himself, never stops chasing growth, never mistakes comfort for greatness. Her perfection is not in being his, but in being forever beyond him. It is this distance that stretches him. It turns longing into energy, denial into discipline, and absence into depth. She teaches him that the pursuit itself is what keeps him alive, not the possession of what he desires. The Sigma male doesn't realize it at first, but she is the safeguard against his own stagnation. She ensures he never confuses satisfaction with purpose, never mistakes settling for living. By remaining unattainable, she keeps him searching, and in that endless search, he becomes more than he ever would have if she were his. Perfection, after all, is not meant to be held. It's meant to stay distant, a star to steer by, not a prize to cage. And she is that star, the unreachable light that keeps him moving forward. Number 12. To teach him that freedom isn't always a reward. Freedom is the Sigma male's anthem. He builds his life around it, shaping every choice, every withdrawal, every refusal of authority into proof that no one owns him. To him, freedom is the highest reward, the untouchable prize that validates his path. But the universe, unwilling to let him worship freedom blindly, sends him a lesson wrapped in human form, the one woman he can't have. Through her, he discovers the truth. Freedom isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's the very cost he doesn't want to pay. She exposes the contradiction at the heart of his existence. He boasts about being untethered, but when faced with her, he feels the pull of longing. For once, he doesn't want to let go. And yet, freedom demands that he does. He can't claim her, can't cage her, can't fold her into his carefully controlled world. The very independence he protects becomes the reason he must stand outside of her reach. This truth unsettles him. Freedom suddenly feels less like triumph and more like loss. It forces him to realize that being free means carrying the ache of things he'll never hold. It's not just about dodging obligations or escaping control. It's about the discipline to live with absence, to accept that desire doesn't always lead to possession. That's the hidden price he pays. And yet, this bitter cost preserves him. If freedom always gave him what he wanted, he'd mistake it for entitlement. He'd grow arrogant, believing independence was a guarantee of endless gain, but she prevents that illusion. By remaining unattainable, she forces him to understand that freedom's value lies in sacrifice, not indulgence. Sometimes it protects him not by giving, but by taking away. She teaches him that freedom isn't about owning everything. It's about learning to walk away even when something inside him screams to stay. And though it hurts, that pain sharpens him. It makes his independence real, not fantasy. In the end, she becomes the proof that freedom isn't always sweet. Sometimes it tastes like hunger, sometimes like loss. But for the Sigma, that taste is necessary. It keeps his freedom pure, reminding him that true independence is never free. It's earned in what he must let go. Every Sigma male believes he can outrun fate, outsmart people, and outmaneuver life itself. But the one woman he can't have is proof that the universe always has the final move. She is not punishment, nor is she some cruel trick. She is the rare mirror that forces him to see what he would never confront alone. Through her, he learns that freedom has a cost. Brilliance needs humility, and even the untouchable can bleed. She sharpens his hunger, exposes his shadows, keeps him restless, and prevents him from rotting in comfort. Without her, he risks becoming a hollow king of solitude, untested, unchallenged, and dangerously close to worshipping himself. With her, even in absence, he is forced into growth. Her distance humbles him, her silence disciplines him, and her unattainability refines him into something rawer, sharper, and far more human. This is why the universe sends her, not to complete him but to stretch him, not to reward him but to remind him. She exists as the paradox he can never solve, the flame he can never hold, and the ache he can never silence. And in that endless tension lies his evolution. The Sigma male does not lose because he cannot have her. He wins because she keeps him from becoming less than what he was meant to be. She ensures he remains hungry, restless, unbroken by comfort, and unwilling to settle for illusions. In the end, the unattainable woman is not his downfall. She is his preservation. She is the beautiful impossibility that keeps him alive, sharp, and untamed. So when the Sigma male meets the one woman he can't have, it isn't the end of his story. It is the sharpening of it. And that, more than possession, is what makes him truly dangerous. And if this hit you deeper than you expected, don't just walk away quietly. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss what comes next. Hit that like button to keep the fire alive. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear how this resonates with you. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stay sharp, stay awake, and I'll see you in the next one.